Richician!
Hey YouTube, Richician84 here, and this is my March 2008 format Prismagician deck profile. Yes, this was a deck that was designed by an old friend of mine, Russ, because I was trying to think of a way to have more of a theme around Dark Magician, and this was what he came up with, and I pretty much played this build on and off for over 2 years, switching between this, Dark Eradicator Warlock, Dark Magic Sworn, Dark Magic Spell Counter, Dark Magic Lockdown, which I wish I never made, and Dark Magician Knight and generic spellcasters, before eventually retiring this deck in October 2010 and changing to Legendary Hero. So here's how I played it. So I have 3 copies of Dark Magician himself. This was the first deck where I ever ran 3 copies of my favourite card. Now the idea, of course, is to use Prisma to get him in the grave and bring him back, basically. This is this and Dark Magician Knight was probably the only deck where you never ever want Dark Magician in your hand. Otherwise, well, he's kind of dead in your hand unless you can find a way to tribute summon him, which is unlikely. But there are ways to get around it. And 1 copy of Elemental Stratos, which is here to search out 3 copies of Elemental Hero Prisma, or pop a Backgrove. I've already got Prisma on the field. And these are my original copies of Prisma, and it wasn't too easy to get back then. I was lucky to get as many copies as I did, and it was a struggle picking it up for my Neospatians and Rainbow Neos back then. So yeah, like I said, the idea of the deck is to reveal a fusion monster that says Dark Magician in the name, and send Dark Magician from the deck to the graveyard. Then he'll copy Dark Magician's name, so I can use Dark Magic Attack and Thousand Knives, and then use various cards to bring Dark Magician back from the grave. And the last monster, Morphing Jar. So yeah, only 8 monsters, but yeah. Morphing Jar is here because one of the biggest weaknesses of this deck is that it can brick. Yeah, there have been several times over the years where I'd get a really bad hand, like all 3 copies of Dark Magician in hand, which is just the worst, and Morphing Jar can compensate for that. Anyway, that's it for the small monster lineup on with spells. So, for the spells, I have 3 copies of Dark Magic Attack for nuking back row, 3 copies of Thousand Knives to pop a monster, and then I have Searchers for Stratos and Prisma, which is 3 copies of E-Core and 2 copies of Rota. Now yeah, there is a chance that any of these cards could end up being dead cards, but that's okay, because you need to be able to see Prisma as quickly as possible, and you can just discard these off Jar, Card Destruction and Hand Destruction. Yes, I know Hand Destruction doesn't say discard, but you get the idea. And then if I want to get any of my warriors back, I have 3 copies of the warrior returning alive, and yeah, they're all original prints. And then 3 copies of Swing of Memories to bring a normal monster back from the graveyard, which in this case is Dark Magician. Then Card Destruction for the same purpose as Morphing Jar, just to get rid of a bad hand, basically. Then Heavy Storm, Lightning Vortex, Monster Reborn. Then 2 copies of Hand Destruction, which is more awkward to use than Morphing Jar and Card Destruction, because it requires both players to have at least 2 cards in hand and 2 cards left in deck. Otherwise, if either of us have 1 in hand or none in hand, or 1 card left in deck or no cards left in deck, you can't physically activate it, which can be annoying. Like if I have a full hand and the opponent has like 1 or nothing in hand, which just makes things awkward. Then Premature Burial, like I said in the last profile, this is the last format where we were allowed to use Premature Burial before it got banned and hasn't been back since. Then MST, and the last 2 spells are 2 copies of Card of Safe Return, which does make sense because I play a lot of Monster Revival cards, and I can just simply draw a card whenever a monster is special summoned from the graveyard. Although it wasn't free at the time, I only played 2, because 2 was all I needed really. And then of course it went on a downward spiral after that. Like on the September 08 list it got semi-limited, then on the ban list after that it got limited, before finally getting banned on the September 2009 list. Anyway, that's it for spells. On with the traps. And again, it's a very small trap lineup, but simple. Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, and 3 copies of Birthright. And yes, all of these are the original print and ultimate rare, which are very nice. I've had these for a long time. And yeah, it's just basically Call of the Haunted, but for normal monsters. That's all it is really. And yeah, that's something I didn't mention in my last profile. Neither of these decks are playing Call of the Haunted because on the March 08 list, Call of the Haunted was actually banned. I think it was because of Jinzo and the fact that it went to free, and it was replaced by Monster Reborn. Oh yeah, and the only card in the extra deck is Dark Paladin, which I'm physically never going to summon. It's just there to reveal with Prisma, and yet there have been many times back then where people have asked me, oh, where's Buster Blader? And I'm like, no, I don't play Buster Blader. There's no strategy to actually fusion summon Dark Paladin. Although, I did run a Buster Blader like quite early on in the September 2010 format and Polymerization. Or maybe I sided it in Poly. I can't remember. It's been so long. But yeah, that is the Prismagician deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and a comment, share and subscribe if you haven't subbed already. This build was pretty fun while it lasted. Although the problem was its weaknesses just put me off playing it in the end. Bricking and the fact that it also loses to banish cards. In fact, one deck in particular that this would auto lose to was Macro. Yeah, in fact, September 08 was when I officially started hating Macro, because at least with the original way I played Dark Magician, Macro and D-Fissure didn't hurt me that much, but because I need the graveyard to be able to play, it was a struggle, and I've just hated Macro decks ever since. And jumped for joy when Macro and D-Fissure got limited, and then of course I was just so pissed off that they went back to free on the most recent ban list. That being said, I did manage to beat Macro with this deck twice before. One time was by pure luck, and another time was due to some clever siding. One of my side options was DD Survivor. Yeah, that helped a lot. And I think I ran Skilled Dark as well, because it was a 1900 beta that could go over Banisher of the Radiance, and Kaiku. But even if that wasn't a problem, bricking was, and I just kept losing too many games because I just bricked so much. Despite the fact that I have ways to get round the bricking, I just decided I'd had enough, and then I switched over to Legendary Hero in October 2010. I actually just remembered another bullshit situation that happened in a game against Macro once. So it was game 2 in a tournament, and I sided in Imperial Iron Wall, just as a way to just kill off Macro, basically, so I can have a graveyard. And I did see it. The problem was I bricked again. I was just getting dead draws, and my opponent had Iron Chain Dragon on the field and kept attacking me with that, and I kept milling good cards that I needed to draw into and kept getting dead draws. Just absolute bullshit. So I had the means to just shut Macro down, and yet I still lost thanks to dead draws. Absolute bullshit. Anyway, yeah, that's the deck. Hope you enjoyed, and Edison decks will be coming up later as the next pass format that I'm going to roll with. Should be able to get some games in with them on next game night. Anyway, like I said, thanks for watching, stay safe, see you guys later. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the Richician YouTube channel.